everybody, I'm Steve White, and welcome to another thrilling installment of Subspace Brief Facts. Crack open an ice-cold holy water and get yourself a nice heaping serving of garlic. Today we're going vampire hunting. In 1997, Castlevania, Symphony of the Night arrived on the Sony PlayStation to near-universal critical acclaim. Known as Dracula X, Nocturne in the Moonlight in Japan, Konami's classic is often credited with giving 2D gaming a new lease on life. In an era where jagged polygonal graphics were so fresh and so new that they could almost literally be considered cutting edge, Symphony proved that sprite-based gameplay still had a lot to offer. Symphony's status as a standard bearer of two-dimensional excellence is precisely why its Saturn port is met with considerably less enthusiasm than its PlayStation counterpart. The Saturn was typically thought of as a far more capable 2D gaming machine than the PlayStation, yet its version of Symphony looks and plays undeniably worse. Awkwardly stretched graphics, a general lack of visual flourishes, long load times. While there are quite a few neat little extras in the games, the words most frequently used when discussing the Saturn port are inferior and disappointing. But back in 1998, I didn't feel that way at all. If you can believe it, when I picked up a random Japanese vampire game off the shelf at my local electronics boutique, I didn't even know I was buying a Castlevania game, let alone a port of a PlayStation classic. I quickly figured this out, of course, but without the basis for comparison, I had no notion that the Saturn version of the game was anything less than top-notch. And that's why I've never felt that the Saturn port has gotten a fair shake. It's definitely not up to the high standards set by its PlayStation forebear, but it's far from unplayable. It's visually inferior, but it has its perks. So, with that in mind, I'd like to celebrate the ugly stepchild of the Dracula X family by exploring its most notable feature, the ability to play a supporting character, Maria Renard. Originally appearing as a child in the first game of the Dracula X subseries, Rondo of Blood, Maria appears as an NPC in the PlayStation version of Symphony, assisting Alucard with useful hints and the occasional magic item. In the Saturn version, in addition to a brief appearance as a mid-game boss, she's unlocked and playable from the start. Maria would also be playable in the 2007 PSP port of Symphony, but her Saturn counterpart plays quite differently, and this was the only version of adult Maria we had for a good long time. In the general sense, Maria's game is a lot like the game's other bonus character, Richter Belmont. The castle, in both its regular and inverted forms, is more or less opened up and free to traverse from the onset. You're only limited by your desire to explore. If you're so inclined, you can skip most of the castle and make a beeline straight for the Dark Priest Shaft, who takes over final boss duties from Dracula in both bonus modes. But come on, where would be the fun in that? As with Richter, the fun lies in seeing if you can take down the game's rogues gallery with a different skill set, and Maria has a pretty fun skill set to mess around with. As previously noted, Maria appears as a bonus boss in Alucard's version of the game in the Saturn port, but her playable counterpart works quite differently from her adversarial form. Since she first appeared in Rondo of Blood, Maria has become a bit of a martial arts master. She's moved from tossing doves to throwing leather. She's got a solid little arsenal of martial arts maneuvers to work with, including a Terry Bogard-style burn knuckle attack. Additionally, Maria's got basic movement pretty well covered. She can walk, run, backdash, slide, and even triple jump. She's also got an incredibly useful super jump for reaching those areas the castle intended for, bats. For a small fraction of your magic meter, you can practically fly around the map. It's far more flexible than the leaping uppercut given to Richter for the same purpose. And you may have noticed that I said magic meter. That's because Maria's primary method of attack is a small magic projectile, which can be charged, Mega Buster style, into a blue version of Alucard's Hellfire attack, and a piercing beam of holy energy. It can even be fired on a downward angle during a jump. But the magic meter goes beyond basic attacks. Maria has a series of supremely powerful magic spells, all of which are based on the animal helpers which she utilized as sub-weapons in Rondo of Blood. That cute little cat? It becomes a raging inferno of a fire spell. The adorable little anti-air phoenix parakeet things? They become an owl familiar. That sweet little turtle which protected young Maria from damage? Well, that's now a healing spell. And perhaps, most notably, the dragon? Well, that becomes a giant Gradius sprite rip that completely breaks the game. In fact, Maria can even sacrifice most of her magic meter to summon all 4 of her helpers at once, and go full-on invincible for about half a minute. All of these magic spells are locked behind fairly complex controller inputs, but once you learn them, Maria's spells do have the net effect of removing much of the challenge from the game, particularly in light of the fact that her magic meter automatically generates over time. But hey, Maria's technically a bonus character, and Symphony of the Night is not all that difficult to begin with, so it really can't be considered that much of a loss, can it? Maria also has full access to all the usual Castlevania sub-weapons, like the game's other playable characters. Further, she can collect up to 999 hearts from the start of the game. While she can't utilize item crashes like Richter, her near-inexhaustible supply of ammunition more than compensates for this fact. In short, Maria's a straight-up Terminator, an unstoppable Dracula-killing juggernaut. She's got incredible mobility, and enough support abilities to turn any of the game's encounters into an out-and-out slaughter, or at least a wholly winnable war of attrition. And perhaps this is deliberate, as she made the game's immediate predecessor, Rondo of Blood, far more manageable as well. But that's not a strike against her. Not by a long shot. I can't stress this enough. Playing as Maria in the Saturn version of Symphony of the Night is fun. While she's playable from the start, she offers a completely new way to experience a classic, somewhere in between Alucard's emphasis on steady progression and Richter's reliance on special items and technical precision. In short, Maria's game is a fantastic addition to an already classic title. While it's pretty much undisputable that the Saturn version of Symphony of the Night is technically lacking, it's unfortunate that these shortcomings have completely overshadowed the one truly new thing the game has to offer, which, if nothing else, is a quite enjoyable variation on an undeniably classic theme. So don't sleep on the Saturn version of Symphony. If you're a Castlevania diehard, it's worth checking it out. While it's not as pretty as its PSX counterpart, it's got at least 33% more replay value, and I think we can all agree that it's a game worth replaying. So, until next time, this is Steve Light for Subspace Briefcase, signing off, and reminding you to let the right one in.